Okay.
Yeah, we can see
All
it.
right. All right. Thank you. I didn't know it's break earlier. Okay. Now, okay. I'm explaining on the step fixed costs. Before the break, for the class break. Now, and what costs, the costs that are associated to the step fixed costs. Sorry, let me accept it. Mhm. All right. Okay, let me move to the last one, the semi-variable costs. Now we have discussed about fixed costs. We discussed about variable costs and then the step fixed costs. The key concept, variable costs are those costs that remain constant per unit over the level of production, but they are vary in total. The fixed costs remain constant in total, but they are vary in units of the product. We need to understand those key points. Now, the semi-variable costs. You see, the semi-variable costs contain both fixed and variable cost elements. The comprises of those two costs, the fixed and then the variable cost. When we get to the cost segment and then estimation, where we'll be able to explain the high and low method, where we have a mixed cost, where we're able to separate them. Now we can separate the variable cost from the fixed cost. We understand these key concepts very well. But from this diagram, you can see the total costs increases, then the level of activities increases. And then cost per unit increases, but the costs per unit of variable cost remain constant. That is what the second diagram is showing. But the fixed cost per unit reduces. You can see the movement from the diagram. I don't know if we can understand the movement from the diagram. Then okay, now I don't know if you can understand the key points from the diagram that shows how the total cost increases, then our level of production to increase. The total cost per unit, the total cost per unit. This one is just showing us the movement of the variable cost per unit remain constant as the total cost and then the level of activities increases. But the fixed cost per unit, decreases as the level of activities and then the total cost increases. That is why we are seeing the movement from the cost per unit section down to the level of activities. Then we can see the cost per unit remain, the cost per unit of the variable cost remain constant. So that's why we are having that straight line. But when we get to where we'll be able to discuss more better, by using the calculation aspect to differentiate it. The purpose of this one is to get the concept of all these things when we are attempting the A part of the question and then the theoretical part of the theory aspects, how the question, how the examiner decides to set the question, because this is the first time they will be setting question on management accounting. So they might decide to test more of theories. We need to balance that equation, make it 50-50. Know the theory aspects and then know the calculation aspects. Whenever we are discussing the calculation aspect, all these courses that we have been mentioning earlier will be very easy for us to get the concepts. Whenever you see how each of the costs is being classified, you will not be confused that what does this one stand for. You'll be able to get that key points of each of these costs, the one that belong to our activities, the production level, the one that did not belong to. How do we ascertain the cost per unit? How do they relate to the level of production? All those things, we need to understand them. That's why I'm trying to take much of my time to explain. And then I've made mention of this earlier. Costs classification. How do we use them? Understand this. How do we use them? We always have to know how to link this cross classification, the element, the function, the nature, and then the cost behavior. We usually use cost elements for controlling costs. Now, an organization have to determine how can we control costs. Most of the organizations usually use cost elements to control costs. The cost elements, by knowing the material costs, the labor cost, the overhead, how each of the costs related to what we are classifying them to. It helps us to ascertain and know how to put each of the costs in their places. Cost element help us to control our costs, while cost function is usually used in preparing our financial statements, where we have to segregate them, the costs that are related to our cost of production, direct material, the direct expenses, overhead, they are related to the cost function. We make mention them in the cost element. After an organization have used all those costs to control their costs, from the management accounting aspects to the financial statements. After a financial accountant help an organization to make a proper decision, by making sure that they utilize each of their resources efficiently. Now, at the end of the period, they will be able to produce or prepare their financial statements. The way all this cost is being classified accordingly will now help the financial accountants to prepare the financial statements. You say you spend a particular cost in purchasing your raw materials. You need to show the evidence to help the financial accountant to prepare the financial statement. The cost function. You have to know the production, the one that belongs to the production, and then the one that belongs to the general administrations, which I explained earlier, the administrative costs, selling costs, distribution costs, as well as the finance costs. All those ones will help, just step by step that every organization has to follow. It helps them to not to misclassify the cost. What belongs to production, the level of production, now we can put it under non-production level. There is a misclassification of costs. That is why from the transaction level to the final stage, we have to track and classify each of the costs properly to help an organization make a proper decision. And then call by nature, we talk the direct cost, indirect cost. This will just help an organization to make a proper cost analysis. Cost analysis. This cost that we spend, that we say it's related to costs, you see direct, you see material cost, you see labor cost, you see overhead cost, the one that we say is indirect cost. You see administrative cost, you see selling cost, you see distribution cost or finance cost. Why the cost by behavior now make everything more sufficient. It helps an organization make a proper decision. We help them to make budget and decision. Okay, all these costs that we spend, variable costs, the fixed cost. Hope we did not miss, hope we did not miss the variable cost and then the fixed cost together. Okay, we have mixed them. How can we separate them and classify them accordingly? You see, all these costs now, they interrelated to each. We just have to understand them, how each of these costs is being worked, how each of these costs is being worked. I need to, that's why I take much time to explain. Now, this one is just to test our knowledge of cost behaviors. It will just give us an insight when we are going through the paper after these sorry. All right. Now, classifying the following item of expenditure according to behavior: the fixed, the variable, the semi-variable, and step fixed costs. Now, this is what we are going to go and work as an exercise after the class. And then I want each of the students to submit it on the group before tomorrow night. This will help me to know how we understand the classification of costs based on the behaviors. And then we also have one in what is the name? Under non-production costs, under costs by function. That one is the exercise one. That one also we test our knowledge on how we can classify costs based on the production and non-production. I want everyone to try it and then submit it on the group chats before tomorrow. Now, the last one that we are going to treat tonight is cost modification. We have talked about the cost classification. Now, this is another aspect to cost modification. How do we modify costs? Cost modification is a systematic process of assigning a unique code or number to each of the costs. It can be costs, it can be accounts or transaction in a particular organization. The purpose of it is just to simplify the identification of each of the costs. The cost can be the cost of production. This usually happen when an organization is being using a particular software, in classifying their costs. like maybe they are using QuickBook, they are using Zoho, they are using SAP. It helps them to classifying their costs based on modification. Then we have the cost by classification, and then they will also have the cost by modification. Where you can easily trace a particular cost by using a unique code. For example, direct material, you have a classification of direct material. Under this direct material now, you now have purchase of flour, purchase of yeast. If you want to make bread, the purchase of sugar. Now, all these items that fall under material costs have a specific cost modification to identify them. The material cost can be 0001, while the items under it can be 001-1, 001-2. Okay, if they purchase flour, they have already know that it's fall under material costs. Then what is the specific code that they use for flour to identify flour under their software or under the particular accounting system that they are using to track their expenses? Instead of searching for flour, they can easily use their searching icon and put the specific code, that unique code they created, to find the flour that fall under material cost and put it in a particular classification that it belongs to. That is what we called cost modification, using a unique code to identify an item in an organization. You can see the example, direct material for product A. That is the specific code. The code modification is DM/A/001. Whenever they are looking for product A, they have already know the cost modification. They have already know that unique code they can use to search it. All these things help an organization to avoid some unnecessary errors. That is why some organizations decide to use a unique code whenever they, I don't know if any one of us familiar to an accounting software. You, even though you are not using an accounting software, you have a record that you are using, or you are using Excel. That is the simple approach where all these small, medium organization cannot be able to purchase a particular software to carry out their activities. They can design Excel using this production code, to track each of their items. That is what we call cost modification, assign a unique code for a particular item. The principles of coding system, it helps us to this level of simplicity, the uniformity, the flexibility, logical structure, all this avoid duplication. It's easy to sort and search. If in exam, I wanted to put the simple way of where we can remember all this. I will adjust it before I post the notes to the group. If on the section B of the exam, they ask us mention 4 or 5 principles of good coding system. Don't even stress yourself. No, why are we coding a cost? It's just to simplify a cost, to create a uniformity to allow a easy track, flexibility, logical structure, and easy to sort and search. Just remember all those little uh, explanation that I put in front of each of the principle. The simplicity is easy to understand and apply. Just put it and you get your full mark. And then how do we use this code in categorizing each of the transaction? Number one, to speed up recording and retrieval of cost data. Instead of us typing purchase of flour, we just put the code 001, 002. It will save time. It will be easy for us, to use. It will reduce wrong classification of costs. As you can see, the third one, they support automation of accounting system. Majority of accounting system now use cost modification. Sometimes in your invoice or receive notes, the narration of a particular transaction might not really to go well with what you buy. Then you want to classify, but you that you purchase, you have already know what you purchase. When the supplier give you an invoice, they will maybe purchase of golden flour. Maybe in your system you only classify flour with a particular code. Instead of you writing in the system purchase of golden flour, you do not need all those narration. Just enter the code and enter the code. It will bring out the flour. Then what just input the necessary details, the flour, and then you put the cost, the amount that you spend in purchasing the flour. You can see from the example illustration. This is the code modification, the code. Then the description, and then how do we categorize them? We say code 100. The description is now showing us raw materials, steel, maybe in the production of car part, all those things. Now we want to categorize them. We have already, in the system, we have already designed in our books of accounts that whenever we have raw materials, purchase steel, the code to identify it is 100. If you are buying plastic, raw materials, the code to identify them is 110. You see, it's different from 100 that belong to steel. It helps us to easily classify all those things in a very easy way to avoid error. We are not going to where we're supposed to put plastic, we now put another raw materials description. No, the unique code has already helped us, has already given us that significance, has already helped us to know where we need to categorize them. We can say all materials, all the code for materials starts with 1111111. Anywhere we are seeing 1111, we know it's under materials. Anywhere we are seeing 2222222, we know it's under wages. Anywhere we are seeing 333333, we know it belongs to overhead expenses. All these things help us to signify our costs accordingly, know where we are to categorize them without making a wrong cost classification. Now you see from the third one, the code 002 wages. Wages or machine operator. We have already looked at that we pay for our machine operator, it belongs to under wages. And then we have already have a design code for machine operator. We put the code, the category, and the amount. Simple, no stress, no misclassification, just straightforward. That is the purpose of why in management accounting we usually utilize cost modification. You know, cost classification, the modification help us to classify each of the costs accordingly. You know, if we are familiar to the accounting system, those are the things that they are using. Those are the things that they are using just to make sure that we have a proper way of classifying and coding our costs. In the exam, just understand the why all this thing is being used, what is cost modification, what is the purpose, what do we use them for? Understand the principle, understand how do we categorize them based on the transaction. So they can just give us a table, give you some illustrations, and now they now ask you to categorize the costs and then using a particular cost modification for them. That is why you need to study the process and understand how each of these is being worked. Now, the last part that we are going to talk about, next week we will talk about cost segregation and then estimation. So our last, as you can see under it, I come up with key points. I've explained it, but I'll just read and then also give some little explanation under it as well. How it works in practice. When a transaction occurs, for example, purchase of steel, the cost clerk, the person responsible for posting each of the transaction, we enter the code based on the classification. Maybe the materials is this 100 code into the cost ledger. You know, in this aspect now, they are not using a particular accounting system. Maybe they have a design ledger where each of the costs has already been classified. Whenever they are spending these costs, they do not need to be cracking their brain. Where can we classify this cost? Where do we need to put this cost? No, they have already studied each of the unit code. What belongs to this, take it to where it belongs. What belongs to this, take it to where it belongs. At the end of the month, if they are doing the reconciliation, if it is an organization where they prepare a periodic financial statement or a periodic performance, how can I put it? Accounting performance of the organization. You know, it's easy for those in charge, the management accountants, to be able to track each of the transaction using the code. That is why, as a management accountant, you know, our three major purpose for every organization is to help them to plan accordingly. We help them plan, then how do we control those plans? Using the plan and then the control of those plans will now help us to develop a proper design methodology for an organization to make a right decision. Whether they want to invest more, incur more, no, it will all these little transactions, all these transactions, the movement from the starting point to the end point will now help the management accountant to understand and then also advise an organization. That's why every individual, in one way or the other, we are acting as a management accountant. You have 2,000. How do you spend your 2,000? You need to plan yourself. today you plan to spend 500. How did you spend the 500? Your transportation, your feeding, and then your other contingency or miscellaneous expenses. But you have already budgeted that 1,000. You have already planned it. The 500 for today, 500 for the next day. How did you want to spend it? You know, all these things will help us individually, an organization, to know how to utilize their costs. You can never see a manufacturing organization where they will not have a management accountant. You know, sometimes they might not call them management accountants. They will just call them inventory accountants, you know, based on the purpose or based on the activities of the organization, just to make sure that they manage each of those activities very well. You know, this is where we'll be stopping today. And I believe we are able to understand what cost classification is all about, how each of the costs is being classified, and then what cost modification is also all about. The major thing, how do we utilize them? How do we make sure that we classify the costs accordingly without misclassificating them? Those are the things that we need to know, understand. In our next class, we are going to discuss on the cost segregation, where we are going to use different cost function equation in how costs can be segregated. And then we'll also talks about cost estimation if time permits us. This is where we are going to end our class tonight. We want to thank everyone for taking their time to participate. And then I believe that all these are explanations that I'm taking my time to explain. I believe we get each of the concepts uh, accordingly. And then, like I said, the two exercises in the note that I'm going to share to the group, I want each and every one of us to go through it and then try to practice it. So thank you very much, and good night. Good night. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.